Here.
Here.
Micah Cunningham.
I just needed it myself.
Tara Durant is here.
Well, she's here.
Patricia and
First sketch right here.
Rupert Farley.
Here.
Glenn Goldsmith. Larry Gross.
Here.
Jerron Hayes.
Here.
Neil Holleran is attending remotely. With us, Neil? Great. Michael Hoyt. Travis King. Nicholas Kwatnowski.
Here.
Great, and welcome, Mr. Kwatnowski, a new member tonight. Thank you so much.
Where?
Stafford County.
Stafford.
And Stafford is fully staffed.
As it should be.
David McLaughlin is attending remotely. Are you with us,
Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin? Ken Pogue. James Powell.
Here.
Dustin Savage. David Swan.
Here.
Rodney Thomas. Rodney Thomas is unable to attend. He's in a class this evening. He will be with us at the next meeting.
As we call a roll, do we know that people online can hear us?
Neil, can you hear us okay?
For the most part, yeah, no problem. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Jane Leeds, are you with us tonight, Jane?
Jane is going to resign from CTAC because of health and some other issues. She would like to stay engaged, and at some time in the future, she may ask to be reappointed. For everybody's information, since she's an at-large member, once she does resign, the policy committee can, if they choose to do so, appoint somebody to fill that at-large position. So I don't know what will happen, but that's what she's communicated to us.
Mm-hmm. It does open an at-large position. Those positions have all been filled.
She's very active, so we're going to
Yes.
miss her.
And we're going to share some action items this evening from Jane and help the systems. But again, we are actively engaged with Jane and keep her as an interested party because she is such an important member of this group. Becky Golden, myself, is here. Coley Tizell, here. Our Public Engagement Officer and Title VI Coordinator, and she will be our partner at CTAC meetings, running the show. Our captioner tonight is Abby Forshier, and we have Ian Ollis as well. Are there other members that I've not called or members of the public with us on the phone? You do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. In terms of the agenda, I'd like to amend the agenda largely as a result of things that have transpired since the policy committee meeting that I attended and some other work that's been done. So I'm going to delete, we're going to keep 8A in. It will be transformed along the lines of what I just described, and we'll go into more detail. A1, we're going to eliminate. A2, we'll talk about briefly. And then we're going to eliminate B, C, and D. And this will make a little bit more sense once we get into the actual discussion. So that would be the agenda as amended. Can I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So make a motion.
Okay, and Mr. Farley has seconded. Is there any discussion about the amended agenda? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye from Neil. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the amended agenda is approved. Okay, on the CTAC meeting minutes, I hope everybody's had an opportunity to take a look at those.
This is Rupert approval.
Rupert Farley moves for approval. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, second. Any discussion?
Do we just have the name of the person who seconded?
Yeah, while we're doing this, for the benefit of the folks that are online, just say name and then if you're gonna second, so we can make sure we've got the records correctly.
All right, that was Jacob Place, Spotsylvania County.
No second, okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Any abstentions? One abstention? Mr. Brown, okay? All right, so it's approved. Now, number 5, the policy committee meeting. Would you like to start?
Yes, Foley, could you go to the policy committee part of the website and their site, and we'll take a look at their agenda. Their last meeting. Next agenda? Yeah. That's, the March.
March 28th, I think.
March 28th. Yeah. Mr. Allis headed the policy committee meeting, and the big item as we scroll down, we had, let's stop right there, back a little bit. We announced the upcoming Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting, and 2 policy committee members of Mr. Allis will be attending April 25th. It's here at the James Monroe High School. Ms. Barber gave a great presentation on the SMART scale, round 5, pre-application process, and explained there are 5 projects on a couple of lists, and over time we'll whittle them down to 4 projects that will be submitted for SMART scale application. There was also an update to our scoring on the different funding sources. Some of our new members see these terms, CMAC and STBG. CMAC is Congestion Mitigation Air Quality. And those are projects, for example, an intersection improvement project to add turning lanes to improve air quality with less delay at intersections, or buying a Fred bus for transit. So CMAC are things dealing with improving air quality. STBG is Surface Transportation Block Grant, and HIPS is Highway Improvement Program funding. Those are projects, ones that Mr. Farley might not like necessarily, road widening projects and new roads, interchanges and things like that. And so there's a scoring process to go through to find the benefits to the region and in the competition for funding. And this Technical Advisory Committee and this MPO has really come up with a great collaborative process to bring forward those projects that provide the most benefit to the region. The big news of that night was the approval of the 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan. If you go to FAMPO's website, under Plans and Programs, the Long-Range Transportation Plan is really a document to be proud of. It's divided into chapters, very easy to read. Thank you, Colleen. And scroll down maybe and show the great chapters there. Staff has just done a fantastic job. I started this job in January. All the heavy lifting had been done before I arrived, and very proud of this document. As well as, I want to point out Appendix H, the congestion management process. That's kind of what I call a best kept secret, and would be of the most interest to you in reading this document about future projects and methods to reduce congestion in that document.
Find in a nearby rescue.
Back to the policy agenda.
They have the address. They got GPS. It said 201 Lorraine. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Neil, is that coming from you?
Yes, they were here.
Negative, it looks like calling user 3 on the invite here has a hotline.
Wasn't trying to interfere.
And scroll down, I think that, there were just some, housekeeping, members on the Transportation Improvement Program and, support, for a grant application for Stafford. So that kind of are the highlights of the policy committee meeting.
Now for the exciting part. In accordance with the last meeting, I conveyed to the policy committee that CTAC had voted to not endorse the long-range transportation plan for 3 reasons. Primarily the lack of a way to get over the Rappahannock, the issue of building and adding concrete where it may not be necessary, and also the fact that a lot of the projects didn't have handicapped and other things built in. And if you want the exact response to those 3 things, feel free to listen to the audio. But I will tell you that the crossing of the Rappahannock engendered some interesting discussion and renewed interest. Expressions of support from Spotsylvania representatives, from Stafford representatives, from King George representatives. Didn't hear anything at that point from Fredericksburg, but that's all right. I was asked by the vice chairman to come on back and say, well, what do you want to cut from the list in order to do this? Now, I foolishly said I'll come up with a list, which was not the right thing to do at that point in time, because that process in and of itself would be lengthy and I think counterproductive. So I've had some discussions with planners looking at maps and studies and so on, and I'm going to lay out for you the direction I would like to go forward as a body. And excuse me if I get up, but this will be a little bit easier. It seems to me that if we want to give people the option to avoid 95, which those of you who were on it on a daily or semi-daily basis know is a pain in the rear end, we want to provide different ways of getting across the river without constructing massive amounts of new roads, that is to say, take advantage of as many existing roads as we can, and in some way transform some of those existing roads plus whatever else needs to be built so that they can be useful for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for recreational purposes. And so the folks here were kind enough to walk me through all the various studies and road options, and I'm going to propose something to you that I would like you, if not tonight, to buy in, to think about seriously. And I personally am serious enough about this that I would like to bring it forward to the policy committee and to all the various jurisdictions as CTAC chair, but, you know, I think it's important enough to bring forward. Now, we have 2 challenges: to facilitate movement from north to south in a way that avoids 95. And there's basically 2 options. You either go east, or you either go west. And so the bigger picture that I would like to propose is a eastern connector and a western connector that takes advantage of as many existing roads as possible, minimizes the need for new construction, but yet gives people an option to bypass this mess, 95. Now, in terms of an eastern connector, this is primarily in Stafford County and in King George County. The only portion, we haven't really rehearsed this, so just, the eastern connector would require a new road to be built in Stafford, which is in their master plan. It starts basically around Centerport Parkway, parallels roughly Potomac Creek, and would connect with Highway 218, White Oak Road. And down the road, White Oak Road could have broader shoulders, some of the vertical and horizontal lines of sight improved so that if you're a bicyclist or a pedestrian, you don't get killed on some of those hairpin turns. It would continue to an existing road. That's okay. An existing road in King George, eventually connect with Port Conway, I think it is, Road, and which would connect to 301. So with the addition of one road in Stafford that's on their plan but not yet built, with minimal impact to existing homeowners, as in no impact, I believe, you're messing with my mind, this is great. Okay, you can essentially go from Centerport Parkway all the way out to Route 3, out to 301, which then allows you to cross existing waterways on existing bridges, and then you have access to 17, Route 2, go all the way down to Richmond if you want, get on 264, and never look at 95 and all the people that have been sitting in traffic for hours. So that's one half. Yes, sir.
That's a long way around to avoid 95.
It is, but if you're not moving on 95, long way is a relative term. I mean, seriously, that.
There are other ways to eliminate traffic on 95.
Hold your thought. I know where you're going, hold your thought. We're not gonna make everybody turn in their car and pick up a railroad car. But anyway, hold on to that. Question?
Existing bridges you mentioned.
The existing bridges exist over the Rappahannock. And if you wanted to go north across 301, you could cross the Potomac. But there's an existing bridge that crosses the Rappahannock. Once you're on 301, you can go all the way down to 17 and cut back in, or you could go to 17, get on 2, and go all the way down to the Beltway around Richmond, which I do, because if I want to go to the airport, I hate 95. So hold your thought just for a second. Now that is politically relatively simple because there's 2 jurisdictions which happen to belong to FAMPO. And the one road that would have to be built is already in the master plan, and 218 Port Conway Road and the rest would not be widened to 4 lanes, would not be widened to 4 lanes. You just have the shoulders broadened a little bit so you could facilitate people and bicyclists. And conceivably, you could go from Centerport Parkway all the way down to 17 on a bicycle if you were one of those folks that want to do that. That's the eastern half. Question?
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever driven on 218 in the evening coming from 301 back to Stafford?
Yes.
At 1 lane?
Yes. No, it's 2 lanes.
Well, it's 1 lane on each way.
Right.
It's 1.5.
Yeah, well, no, you're right.
There are times there where the cars are not moving and don't let somebody just happen to run into a deer or something. Then the traffic won't move at all.
No.
So then you have to find your way over to 301. What I'm saying is, that sounds like a pretty cool idea.
Well,
If you're going to use 218 and not widen it, that's a horrible idea.
you would widen the shoulders, but there's a difference between 2-lane and 4-lane, both from an environmental standpoint, emissions standpoint, and money standpoint. Now, down the road, if this was built and somebody said, we'd like to make that 4-lane, that's doable and less of a challenge than initially creating this easternmost connector. Now, before you fixate on that one, I bet this is the bigger challenge. The western portion, if we can get to that more detailed road. Okay. Back?
2 or 3 parts, isn't it?
Back?
Go back quite a bit.
Okay, here we go. Now, this one
That's the existing.
is more problematic. One of the reasons is 3 jurisdictions, of which only one is in FAMPO, would have to agree to some kind of cost-sharing basis. But it has tremendous options and utility for them if you can get past the politics and the not invented here and all the rest of that. And that's a challenge. It can be overcome, but it's going to be a challenge. So what you would have is you would have people in Stafford could exit on any of the east-west roads that are going to be are being studied right now. They could get on the Berea Parkway that is going to connect to Centerport Parkway and connect in the vicinity of Berea Church Road to 17, well to the west of the majority of congestion.
Let me have Coley scroll forward until we get to one more. Just keep going forward. That's back. Keep going. And let's keep going. We'll get to a better map in a minute.
Now, you could probably glean that we haven't rehearsed this or gotten into the sequence. We'll do all that, and we'll send it to you.
There you're 2 behind.
Okay. All right, so there is the road that has to be built. Now, let's see. Now, which way should we go to get to the western side?
That is the west of that,
Look at the.
No, this is the eastern one here. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Lake of the Woods would be western.
Okay. Now, there's some interesting dynamics over here. If you're familiar with the traffic patterns, here's Route 3. You can go east or west. If you go east, you can head into the shopping in Fredericksburg. If you go west, it connects to 15, 29, and other points. One of the things that may make this very attractive to the folks in Spotsylvania County is Lake of the Woods is basically stuck in the middle of nowhere with one road to get out. The road that we're proposing would follow basically a utility line easement on property that's not developed and is unsuitable for development. Yes, sir.
I can just clarify, when you say we, the FAMPO staff doesn't take sides.
I'm talking about me.
Just
The collective, me.
FAMPO staff does not.
A disclaimer, FAMPO has not endorsed anything, okay? They have provided maps and information for me, and if you want anybody on the dotted line, it's me.
If anybody else wants the map for anything you're working on, we'll happily give you maps. We're not particularly voting as staff for any particular option.
I think I've heard speeches like that in Washington, almost, never mind, okay. But anyway, so if you look at, there's 17, which, as you know, gets you up into the northwest quadrant. But if you want to head to the southwest, you've got to go all the way out to 15 and 29.
Right.
That's an option. It's more of a benefit for folks here, because now, if this road is built, again, minimal disruption, if no disruption on existing homes, it connects to Route 3 and gives you the option to head back towards 95 if you're crazy and you want to sit in traffic, or if you want to get on Route 20 and go down to Charlottesville, or 15 or 29 and head south, you have that option. But this would then give you multiple options to head to the south, southwest, or if you were absolutely determined to go back to the southeast. Now, the downside to this portion of what I'll call the outer connector is 3 jurisdictions that have to play nice. Only one of them belongs to FAMPO, and it will require bully pulpit, cost-benefit analysis people to make the compelling case to the electorate why that's a good option for them. So essentially, 2 legs to a connector that gets you across the Rappahannock. Now, this one would require some bridges to be built. A bridge has to be built over the Rapidan, a bridge has to be built over the Rappahannock in order to make this road work. But the nice thing is, there are no political authorities that would prevent the Rappahannock from being crossed there, and no houses that a jurisdiction would have to condemn for the right-of-way. So again, this would be new construction here, this would be new construction here, and this would now give people the option all along, when you incorporate the east-west mobility study that's currently ongoing, you would never have to go to 95. Now, if the traffic is terrific and you want to sail across on 95 north or south, go for it. But those of you who get out on a daily basis know that that is not the case. And the 6 lanes we have going south and the 6 lanes we're about to have going north merely pushes the problem further north or further south. Go ahead.
This is a long way out of the way to the west to avoid 95. And I also don't see why taxpayers should reward the people who live in Lake of the Woods for locating in a location that you said is out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, you can take that point of view, but we can't unring the bell. Now, I'm not promoting or advocating solutions that will create sprawl. I'm trying to use, for the best possibility we can, to use existing roads, avoid existing homes and developments and construction, and give people an option. Because doing nothing, in my opinion, and I told you that the first time I came to this, doing nothing is not an option, and it only exacerbates the situation. You had a question?
Yes, so where do speed limits come in as well? Because I noticed that one problem with congestion on the majority of these back roads is they're set to 55 and lower, and people travel on them at 70. So I feel like whoever is setting these speed limits needs to adjust them a little bit higher, because people aren't even following them anyways. And
Aren't there state regulations there, though?
Well, I'm not even going to get into that, because there is what's legal and what's a practice. And the only thing you can do to combat that is for the jurisdictions to step up and say, we're going to enforce traffic. And lately, Stafford's been doing a darn good job of speed, but that's a totally different issue. There's not really, realistically, there's not much we can do. However, we can take those primary roads and make them wider, not 4 lanes, but improve line of sight, improve the ability for somebody, if they want to bicycle or walk or do something, so that you're not coming around a blind corner and get a pedestrian like a deer in the headlights. And then down the road, if somebody wants to make the conscious decision, we're going to make them 4-lane and modified traffic speed limits or anything else like that, that's their alternative. But what I'm trying to portray to you here is there's nothing on the horizon, either in the long-range transportation plan or some of the disagreements among the jurisdictions that leads to a solution anytime soon, although there is general agreement from most of the people I talked to at that meeting that something needs to be done. This is the something. Now, I'm open to alternatives, and Rupert, I agree with you. I don't want to put concrete everywhere, but we need to do something. We just can't write off Lake of the Woods and say, you dummies relied upon the local government to take care of you, and they lied. Now, they can punish them at the ballot box, but there are some things we need to do. Yeah.
Somebody up there will say that.
I'm sorry, was there a question back here?
I actually am relevant tonight. I'm from King George.
Thank you.
So here's what I'll say. I think the road that you're talking about creating is great. I think that makes sense. I don't think you should factor 218 into this at all. So we're sitting here, we're talking about here in being rude. I would say I get a King George alert every other day for 218. They're building all over 218, houses are going up like crazy. A lot of people, they put a light up there at 206 and 218 because all the base traffic comes out 206 and a lot of the base traffic comes through 218. And I literally was on that road yesterday because I had a meeting at the estate at Whitehall, and I, like an idiot, went that way instead of going up to 3, even though the GPS told me to go to 3. And I almost got run off the road twice by people, and I'm a fairly quick driver, but people were, and there is nowhere to go. There's a place on 218 where you can hilltop. You know how to hilltop in a car? There's a place where you can hilltop very well, and I watch people do it all the time. I just think that's an incredibly dangerous place to, now, I will say, Port Conway, if you bring the road in and people cut over at Fletcher's Chapel to Route 3, Port Conway, of course, runs back through Hop Yard, the new development, and that development is growing back, and I think they're putting a solar farm back in there, but the connector from Port Conway to 301 is not bad. So that is, to me, is a little more realistic. There's still kind of a dead man's curve there, but that, you've got 4 lanes, Route 3, the speed limit is up a little bit now. But my son-in-law is a King George County deputy, and I guarantee you if I went home tonight and told him what you just said, I'd have to get out the defibrillator.
He's got to find me. And I understand, there are going to be issues with all of these roads. Now, I would offer to you, if you have a better solution that doesn't require expansive construction on rerouting a road or making it 4 lanes or something, please offer that up. But in general, the concept is, if we get, let's see, if we can go, put a slightly bigger map, if you would. Okay. This is all non-negotiable. One jurisdiction or another is going to throw a red flag for either very good reasons, like you can't bulldoze this development, or we don't want you crossing the river there because of water quality issues or something else. Given the constraints of FAMPO, everybody has to play nice in order to get it approved. And so,
can you demonstrate that again?
I'm sorry?
Can you show me this?
I would say roughly, if you go from here to here, this is out of the question. Okay. Now, you do have some existing crossings. You have the Chatham Bridge, which has just been repaired. You've got the Route 1 bridge, which is going to have to be fixed at some point, make things really exciting. And then you have the I-95 disaster, which merely pushes the congestion north or south. The question then becomes, how can you get across the Rappahannock without using this and not cause a jurisdiction to throw a red flag?
Did you include Joe's plan in your analysis?
Yes. And the reason I included that is for two reasons. Red flags would be thrown.
Why?
Probably Stafford would throw a red flag because, and here's where we all get parochial. This is where we should turn off the recording. No jurisdiction wants to cut its own throat for another jurisdiction, and I understand that. Stafford would probably say that you're going to have all of our business traffic go down there. When we hope to create something, Stafford Town Center, and whether that gets built or not, I leave it to you and your devices. But I have it on probably pretty good authority that the red flag would be thrown there. Just as a red flag would be thrown on something that would make it too easy for folks to go to Cosner's Corner instead of Central Park. Please.
I'm not sure. I'm a little confused, I guess, because I'm thinking that this body, as such as also as with tech committee, should be putting forth their recommendations based on traffic studies and facts instead of based on possible political outcomes.
Well, ideally, yes. But at the same time, I can give you the most wonderful study in the world, and if they throw the political red flag, not only have we wasted the study money if we've gotten it, and I don't think a jurisdiction is going to give us study money for something they know they're going to oppose right at the onset, or something that is non-executable because of reasons like condemnation proceedings and all the rest of that stuff. So this is where a little bit of political awareness needs to enter into the picture. Now, what has to happen at this point? I'd like you all to consider it. If somebody has alternatives to the easternmost one or the westernmost one, I'm all ears. Since there are some river crossings involved, we're going to have to give them some other options on river crossings that don't already exist, which is primarily the western option. There are going to be jurisdictions that could care less about FAMPO and are going to have to be sold on the basis of how does it benefit me? And if you're expecting me to pay for a part of it, what do I get out of it? So in of itself, this is going to be a challenge. But as I said earlier, to do nothing and let this can kick down the road means all you're going to have is gridlock. Cussing politicians who'll get voted out, replaced by other politicians who will not have a solution, and we come to a screeching halt. And I personally feel badly about that. Sir.
I'm sorry, on the western side, where did you say connected to 17?
It would go.
Let's go to the very last slide. There you go. There you go.
Well, you can't really see it, but.
It's just inside Stafford's county line. This is the county line between Fauquier, Culpeper, and Stafford. So I'm not sure precisely where that is. It's relatively low density, if any density, and it would cross a bridge, follow a power line easement that's basically not developable, and connect down to Route 3 just outside of Orange.
And you said, you mentioned Berea Church. Is that where you said?
Yeah, Berea Church is up here. Now what they're going to do is Centerport Parkway comes right about here. They're going to connect to it, and this has already been in the works. This is Berea Church Parkway, which will terminate at 17 right here. And as you know, this is all the congestion on 17, so it allows you to bypass that. Whether you go north or whether you go south, it takes longer, but if 95 is not moving, it takes far less time. And one of the people who came up to you, a supervisor from Stafford, said, having spent 3 hours stuck on 95 at Thornburg, you know, it dawned on me again, the need for some alternatives to go east or west and not due north. So.
Where's he been?
I'm sorry.
Where's he been? I've been here 36 years. I've been stuck for 36 years.
I'm hoping to get support from some of these people, so leave the names off.
I know, and thank you for giving me a chance to speak finally. You did answer the questions I had. I was wondering how you were gonna get over to the western connector there. And just a couple points. One, Stafford County Police, at least I can only speak for Stafford County, hesitate to pull over people for speeding in rural areas because there's no place to pull over. There are no shoulders on the roads, most of them. I don't know what the percentage is, but VDOT knows. But if you talk to a Stafford County deputy, he's gonna follow somebody for a long ways before he tries to pull them over. And it's just not feasible unless he's reckless driving. Secondly, down around Lake of the Woods in that area, I think that your line that someone drew comes right down through protected battlefields. At least I know across the street from Lake of the Woods. It's not Lake of the Woods, it's another wilderness.
Yeah, wilderness is
area. So we have to be careful when we're looking at all that.
Absolutely.
We could get into an issue where we'd have to go talk to the federal government about trying to get a road through there.
We'll have to talk to the feds in any regard because the two bridge crossings for the western one are going to require environmental statements and the feds will have to approve that. So I'm sure that'll be part of it. You know, in terms of sequencing of this thing, I would like to talk to them about the totality of the picture conceptually, and there can be adjustments based on recommendations and more thought and study. The first and the easiest one to do happens to be this one, assuming we can find a suitable road combination, because this is entirely within FAMPO's jurisdiction. This one is the challenging one, because I have no stance whatsoever with Culpeper and Orange. But a case can be made to say, are we okay on the remote?
Is that Jane?
I understand. Calm down.
Who is this?
Same hot mic from before, calling user 3.
Hot mic calling through.
Okay, everybody, please put your devices on mute.
Somebody on there.
Okay. So this is what I would like to go back to the policy committee and talk about. There are a lot of moving parts. And at the end of the day, they can say, hell no, and we'll all continue to wallow in the transportation morass we have now. Or people can say, this may be an option with minimal impact that gives us some options on how to move forward. But I'd like to offer them some alternatives on how to get across the river and be able to go in different directions without the 95 corridor. Because as you've probably heard, one of the options that's being floated is let's extend 95 and make it 6 lanes, both directions, all the way down to Massaponax, which to me is insanity. It merely pushes the problem further south. I don't know where they propose to do it, or further north, but you still don't give the residents of this area transportation options. The East-West mobility study that FAMPO is doing now ties into this very nicely, because there may be some minor enhancements that need to be made to promote this network of roads that Joe Brito was talking about, on how to get around in different ways. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just bring me up a little bit of speed on the pushback on the crossing across the Rappahannock, where, I mean, the lack of options, is that it, or?
There's two reasons. One, there's a ownership issue where Fredericksburg has the river rights, I guess you would call it, and can say, we will allow you to cross there, assuming you get the federal approvals and all the rest of that, or we throw the red flag and say you don't. The other option is this area has been extensively built up, and so not only do you have the homegrown opposition of having an improved primary road go through there, but there would be condemnation. If you look in one of the handouts, and if you don't have it, we'll get it to you. Or better yet, Becky, the one that they sent to the Board of Supervisors, that policy paper.
Just a question. Your advanced button 1. No effect, sorry, there, stop there.
Yeah, every little black dot is a house.
So just to answer that question a little from staff perspective, there was a presentation here last year by Stephen Haynes from VDOT. And he explained that all of those options were studied and tried and all that jazz, and the CTB approved two options. One of them is, I think, this red line here. That's Route 3, which would be carried on in the future down through here, either through this pink line or a line down here on existing roads. And that connects into Centerport Parkway over there. So that was more or less the proposal. The other alternative that the CTB produced is to just build that portion to 17, build the two sets of bridges, which they're building now, and then to connect here a new off-ramp to what is
Celebrate Virginia South.
Yeah, I forget what the name of that road is. It's not Carlby Silver, it's the parallel one.
West Shelton.
Gordon Shelton Boulevard. And build a road through here that would connect back to Route 3. So you would have that part, two new bridges, and a road here to Route 3, which was approved by the CTB. Also, at a different time, they approved this red thing to come here. In both those cases, one of the parties to FAMPO, their Board of Supervisors, after the approval by the CTB, a funding proposal, and everything being put into place, took a vote to veto the project.
That's
Spicy.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and on another occasion, I think the city voted against one of the offers.
Yes.
So the difficulty is that the CTB did approve these, developed a whole plan for the funding, and then one of the three jurisdictions pulled the plug by voting against it, and then the other jurisdiction voted against the other alternative. So they came to a screeching halt. However, VDOT decided that they're going to build the two bridges anyway, so that whether or not you build this road and that red part to 17 or not, they're still going to build bridges. And FAMPO took a decision to support that, and FAMPO went to the CTB and said, please fund it now. And so that resulted in the two bridges and the additional 6 lanes, 3 lanes either way, that was currently built. FAMPO actually went and said, we support that to build the bridges, and we want to do that. And VDOT decided, because it was in the plan that the CTB approved, they would take that portion of the plan and implement it, which is why you've got the 6 bridges today. The rest of those 2 options was shelved because mostly Spotsylvania Board of Supervisors, but also at another time, the city of Fredericksburg voted against it publicly. And it caused some fallout. There was a lot of ill feeling at the state legislature because all of the money that had been spent developing those options, and in some cases buying the land already, after which Spotsylvania then voted no. So there was some ill feeling about that. The state had put a lot of money into them and then had the rug pulled out by the county saying, we're going to veto this, boycott it, we don't want it. Sorry.
And I think it's important to note here that what you're talking about being built now is Corridor 5 of the choices back to
Option 5, yeah.
Outer Connector story.
Yeah.
Corridor 5 was the choice that gave you the most congestion relief. So we wound up with the choice that gives you most congestion relief. So I think it's a little bit of a stretch to have the state go and build the most expensive, but the one that gave you the most congestion relief. And now for us to go back to the table saying, hey, we'd like another connector in addition to that.
It can't hurt. It cannot hurt. If you look at this from 610 all the way down to Massaponax, it's a zoo. And if you're a resident of our jurisdictions and you want to get someplace other than where you are or on 95, you want to be able to go east or west and use some of the connecting roads. We either do nothing or we come up with some alternatives. Now, I don't know what chances it's going to have, but I believe we have an obligation to take a look at what exists now, what the likelihood of some of those options being enacted, and give them some planning options. And the beauty of it is, we're not elected. We have the ability to approach this from a totally new standpoint. the worst they can do is at the next policy meeting, if I brief this as the chairman, they can say, sit down and shut up. Or if I brief this as a concerned citizen, they can say, don't ever come back.
No.
At which point in time?
They can't do that.
At which point in time, then I'll be back the very next meeting. But I think we have an opportunity as citizens who have an interest in transportation to come up with at least an impact solution as we can conceive that gives our citizens an option. And I'm very sympathetic to your point about, you know, condoning mistakes in the past. You know, Stafford just got dropped on them today in their planning process, a 3,000 unit rezoning, which I'm going to fight to my last dying breath because it's stupid. But this is an opportunity for us as a collective body, perhaps to move a solution forward. Whether it gets funded or not, whether Culpeper, Orange agree or not, I don't know. But even just the Eastern thing gives people some options, especially when you combine it with the East-West Mobility Study. Sir.
Yeah, I'm missing a part of your Western plan here.
Yeah.
From Lake of the Woods back down toward 95-ish.
If you wanted to go that way, you could make the turn back into Route 3.
Okay.
Great.
Or,
that's all we need, more traffic on Route 3.
Well, that's west though, right?
No, I would never do that. If I was going to take that bypass, it's because I want to go south.
Yeah. Right.
I would go from 3 down to Orange, Charlottesville. I could cut over to 29 or 15. That would take me all the way down practically to the Shenandoah.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about the semis that are coming off from 81. They're on 17. They know that route because they all have GPS and they're routed by their dispatchers. I'm just wondering how to keep, I would like to see them stay out of the Fredericksburg area if possible. And also to have information how to get around the Fredericksburg area somewhere along their route. Somehow from this area, and you know, Carmel Church has a truck stop area there, and that would be a great place for information as a data center for traffic management for anything going northbound, the whole region here. And the state could make an investment in that. But coming the other way, I've always thought out near Fauquier County, having some kind of a traffic data center where there'd be a truck stop and truckers could come in there. There would be a police, state police substation there, and there would be resources to get both commercial vehicles and private vehicles through this region, and bicyclists, for God's sakes. You know, we missed a large bike event in Fredericksburg or in Richmond. What was it, about 5 or 6 years ago? They came from all over the world to be on the back roads. And my son-in-law is a Caroline County lieutenant, and he was out there directing the traffic, but no one came north of Bowling Green. Because, yeah, because the road, well, the planners wouldn't allow it because of the traffic flow. But whatever we do, we've got to think broadly and try to encompass as many entities as possible. And I'll throw this one out there. Where does Amazon stand in all of this? Because as I come up Route 1, I see the largest warehouse, as far as I know. I don't know how many thousands of square feet.
There's 2 others.
There's 2 of them.
Yes, I know.
That's not Amazon.
I didn't want to overwhelm you with it. But what a partner if you can get them on your side. Because now I'd be willing to bet a pretty good sum of money that I can't drive 10 minutes from my house that I don't see at least one prime vehicle in my neighborhood. And they're out there on the same roads that we are looking at for congestion management. They're congested. See, I think you're absolutely correct. That's an aspect of congestion mitigation that can be built into this, and this is why we as a collective body need to organize for combat. But they have the horsepower. They have the power of the purse. They have the influence.
they have the recognition, and if they go to a policy committee meeting, you know, the regional director for Amazon, along with you, and stand up and go, hey, folks, we got to do something.
Some of you gentlemen need to dust off your suit coats, sport jackets and ties, and ladies' dresses, because that's the kind of engagement we're going to have to do, whether it's in Richmond to assist our local delegate or to go to the major movers who can try. I'm with you.
You mentioned a minute ago congestion mitigation efforts could be built in.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
He's talking about using data to get people to avoid the January 1st debacle. Right. Part of which was caused by systems like Waze and so on not keeping up and continuing to pile people into an already impossible situation when, if it was more automated and wired better, they could have headed to 81 or somewhere else. But this is a complex ballet. But we got to take the first step. Sir?
I would love to see you expend all the energies you've been expending in trying to get us to have congestion mitigated by congestion pricing. You could accomplish all the congestion relief you wanted with no cost.
Inflation.
I understand your point. My house is now visible on Google Earth, and I don't want people coming after me with knives, guns, and pitchforks, because that's what would happen. I understand your point.
And political again.
No, survival. I personally, we'll have the discussion another time. I personally don't agree with most of the aspects of congestion pricing. I got to tell you right off the bat. Where it is feasible, I'm all in favor of it. There are aspects in your congestion mitigation annex which are really smart. Do something as simple as synchronize the frickin' traffic lights. But we're getting into the weeds, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. This is a big picture. It's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of convincing, a lot of briefings. I would like your approval to take it forward, realizing there'll be tweaks based on the ground and some other things and better suggestions and alternatives. But I'd like to take to them, there's no need to throw up our hands. Let's start moving in a direction that has some utility. So that's what I'm going to ask you for your approval tonight, sir.
I think that's a great idea. One of the things we could do as part of that is to indicate the unknowns in our plan, the less obvious things that we know are there, and those are wicked problems that have to be solved. But if everybody's going to just turn a blind eye or turn around and not listen to the speakers and not look at the proposals, then shame on us. Because one thing you didn't mention, what's the projection for the increase in I-95 traffic from Quantico to Massaponax in the next 10 years?
You have that, do you not?
We have it somewhere.
Yeah.
Sure we do. If we don't, VDOT better get it.
Yeah.
And the CTB better have it as well, because they're going to be inundated as they try to get around in Richmond. And I think that would just be fantastic if that were the case.
Yeah.
But we need to identify where we're weakest, and for our own selves, work on those as wicked problems and come up with solutions. And meantime, keep pushing the big diagram forward.
You bring up a very critical point. We have that administrative constraint of once a month and FOIA. So yeah. I'm more than willing. The initial briefing I'm going to give is big picture stuff, and I'm just going to tell them there's a lot of things we don't know that have to be worked out, cost sharing, political buy-in, all the rest of that. I would like to crank out the iteration of slides once or twice a month. Becky would send them out. You'd put your edits back to her, and we would try, and we're not going to please everybody, but try to come up with the consensus best edited approach for the next iteration, because none of us are full-time. Every jurisdiction has their own planners. We meet once a month so that you don't go to jail. We need to follow FOIA. I'd hate for her to leave us 2 weeks after she came here. And it's going to be interesting and difficult, but I'm willing to try it if you are willing to support it and get engaged.
Quick question, Hank.
Please.
David Swan, by the way, I guess, I don't know if anybody can recognize my voice if they're transferred.
You have to get a shave when you get your suit jacket on, but go ahead.
I don't think I'll do that. But anyway, do we have SharePoint? Are we using SharePoint?
We do have it.
We do have it. Is it feasible to use SharePoint for us? I mean, we can respond. I use SharePoint every day in my job. And I'm working huge amounts of data, information, really.
It's a complicated question because the FOIA wants you to not find a way to have a committee meeting without having a committee meeting.
Well, if we have a Teams meeting or something like that.
A Facebook page work.
I don't think Facebook.
All of you are doing something, we've got to advertise it. You can't do it without the public invited to participate.
Well, you could have a portion of your website, your SharePoint site, available to the public. Certainly, you can do that.
Well, let's do this. Let's get a readout.
Work, and I'm government.
Is it that all of us are doing it, or all of us are doing it at the same time?
No.
Well, you got to be careful about getting too clever.
No, what I meant was
the point of FOIA is that
we're open.
Have an open public process and a public meeting, and you don't break away into groups to go and work out all your solutions, and then the public isn't part of the process. So the point is, we have to ask the question, can we feasibly make SharePoint open to the entire public?
No, I wouldn't recommend doing that because there are things.
So then the question is, then you're starting to have a meeting, you're just having the meeting by working online.
You're only working in there one at a time.
Yeah, that's the thing, you could all go in and make your changes, and we're gonna show the slides every time we have a meeting, and that's public record, right?
That's right. Could be
I see what you're saying. In SharePoint, only one person can edit at a time.
Yes.
Everybody should see the work product.
Unless you have a document checkout process, you can't have that. Sorry.
So it's not actually just multiple people can work at the same time on SharePoint.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's explore that option, which is attractive. And until we get a definitive readout, we're going to use Becky.
We'll have to find out. In the meantime,
please
all send your comments one at a time to me. Then it won't constitute a meeting.
Yeah, and then she can blast out the amalgam of edits that she and I work on and blast it out to everybody in one time. It's just that I can't do that to you. She can do that, but I can't. And the communication's got to be one-on-one back to her, or one of us. I mean, you can't have two or more. You can't have more than two members involved in the communication. So, but we'll get a readout on that.
I think what you're trying to articulate are those, what do you call them, the mean items, the big, you have an expression.
Wicked problems.
The wicked problems.
Yes.
So here's an idea. Perhaps staff comes up with a list of wicked problems. Yes. One of those wicked problems is 218, an improved two-lane 218 project. The graphic that we had on, Coley, if you might just go back one more. In the bottom right-hand corner is a depiction of an improved two-lane road. That's County Track Road, primary route 271 in Hanover County. And I worked for Hanover as their Director of Public Works when VDOT improved that road. A primary route, that's what 218 is, that's what 206 is, and what Route 20 is, going up, that we're talking about. And really the western connection that's on that slide there would be an extension of primary route 20. It already has a digit. And County Track Road was just as curvy and mountainous as 218 is. And when I saw the plans for the improved two-lane road, that's what you're looking at now, but wow, big impact. But it straightened out the horizontal geography. It flattened the curves and filled the valleys. And it was an expensive, improved two-lane road, but that's what you got me in. Right. And people can ride bikes on it, and they can walk on it. So one of our wicked problems is going to be that when we have, you know, the new, I call this, Mr. Sharpenberg named it the new northeast quadrant connector, when it touches down on 218, then we need to have in that funding program, which is not in here now, enough money to do an improved 2-lane on 218. That's your wicked problem. An improved 206 that takes you down to King George Courthouse. And that's a serious improve. That's not just taking that road that's there and putting a little shoulder wedge. That is a lot of do-re-mi. But it doesn't take houses, or it may have to take a house. But that's your wicked problem, that we want to look at these 2 new routes. There's some wicked problems there. But the other wicked problem, the other one, and if Coley, you go to that other slide there, when you get, let's go to the last slide and hold deck. That light yellow line that goes down through Spotsylvania County, that's Brock Road. So I live in Caroline County. I've stumbled up every road there is to try to get to Warrenton and to Culpeper and to get to Points West. I have a horse and do horseshoes. So the other wicked problem is Brock Road. Needs to be an improved 2-lane. It does go and make it a good 2-lane road. And Mr. Farley, we're not talking about 4 lanes. 2 lanes is 2 lanes is 2 lanes. And not talking about, and we're talking about paved shoulders. And it'll look like
it 4 after we're dead, that's their fight.
So I don't want to rain on your parade, but I just want to put some caution into the wind here. It's great to come up with a list of problems that need to be solved, and it's great to propose solutions to those problems, and it's great to present those solutions to the FAMPO committee, the policy committee. We as staff can help you with that. Just the caution is this: just approve the long-range transportation plan, which took 4 years to build. I want you to walk away from tonight with this impression that you're going to take all these roads that Becky's talking about and you're going to fix them. You're going to come up with the proposals. You're going to get them all into the long-range plan. You're going to get consultants to do the engineering design. You're going to get the money. You're going to get them, because your jurisdictions have got staff that have worked for years to come up with those projects that have just been put in the long-range plan. And they're just saying, temper your expectations. Like picking a road and a big project, fine, go ahead with it. But just don't think for a minute that it's going to be well received by all of your jurisdictions who've spent countless hours looking at these problems and coming up with solutions. And they've then had to face what is called fiscal constraints, which is we have to approve a realistic set of improvements that are fundable in the next 25 years. And so they've had to make choices. Can we fix this one or can we fix that one? Well, we have to pick one because there's not enough money to fix them all. So they've picked this one and they've come to the policy committee and said, we want this one. And we've had to work on these over 4 years and go and work with the federal authorities to get what's called air quality conformity analysis done on all of those 360 some projects and get approval. And then we've had to fit them within the fiscal constraint. And then we've had to get them into the LRTP. And now, only now, as of last Monday night, when the policy committee voted it through, can your jurisdictions now apply for the funding to build those things, because they now legally comply with all the federal requirements. They're in the LRTP. They can now start the process of design to design the solutions and then go and apply for the funding through all the different funding schemes. Big, complex machine. And I didn't design it, and I don't necessarily think it's a good machine, right? If I was God, I might simplify it for everybody. It is what it is. So by all means, come up with a list of problems. Come up with a list of solutions. Present those to the policy committee or your own jurisdictions, transportation staff and planners and engineers, and speak to your politicians. And by all means, champion the solutions. Just remember what I said, that they spent 4 years just doing this, and they've come up with a list. And when you rock up with your list of 10 others, just realize that they're going to, go, well, there are other things going on here. We've looked at these, and we had to choose between 206 or 218 or whatever it is. I don't know which one they had to, and they had to pick solutions. So a lot of the money, for example, is going towards all the roadways around the VA clinic, because Pennsylvania has to fix all those roads, upgrade them, put new bus routes in there, and a whole bunch of things. Stafford is working on the downtown center. They're working on US 17. They've got a whole list of things. Those are all kind of in there. Fredericksburg is trying to get a new access point into Central Park, and a bunch of, so just, all I'm saying is, just keep that in your mind.
Contrary to today's saying, I'll have this implemented in 90 days. One last, please.
Mr. Chairman? Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
Sam McLaughlin.
Hold on just a second, sir. Dave Swan here. One thing we have to remember in Stafford County, if you build a road, or if you improve a road, they will come. The builders and the residents who want to live here will come. And so we have to somehow accommodate the growth that's going to occur if we improve transportability on these roads. And we need to go out of our way to show the existing people that live in these subdivisions and along those roads how our proposal, or the proposal, is going to help them. Is it going to cut down 10 minutes off their drive from Berea Church to Fredericksburg, whatever it is? That's the problem that I see, having lived here for a long time. Because if I drive out, I'll guarantee you, I'll make a bet with anybody at this table, and I've done this, if I drive out on Poplar Road and I stop at a gentleman's house by the name of Charlie Brown, this is a real resident who lives out about a mile from where I live, and I ask him, hey, this bad turnout here, how long has that been bothering you, and how many people have been killed? Oh, countless people have been killed. But there's a proposal, and there was a bond set in 2008 to straighten that road. I said, really? I've never heard of that, and I've sat on this committee since 2016. And so I asked Gary Snellings, my supervisor, what's the story with this? He goes, oh yeah, we had a bond to straighten that road. Hasn't been straightened? I said, not since I've lived here, 36 years. It was done within a year. The road is straight.
Hold on just 1 minute.
So the point I want to make is we may have to drive these roads. We may have to pull over and knock on somebody's door like a visiting politician. But if we have to do that to get buy-in, that'll only help what we're trying to do.
No, you're absolutely correct. This is going to be a complex process. I'm sorry, online, you got a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Dave McLaughlin. First off,
Hey,
I'm going to chastise Dave for telling me to wait and stop and not speak. That is not his position to do that. Is the chairman to say.
Hey, Dave, I've already been recognized by the chairman here, so.
All right, go ahead, Dave, please.
Listen up.
The chairman does that. So, but I would like to kind of hitchhike a little bit on what Ian said. I don't want us to go from our boardroom to the policy committee. I mean, that's foolish. We don't have any technical credibility. We don't have much credibility, period. But we should go to the technical committee with our proposal, work through them, not go direct to the policy committee. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Okay, Dave, this is how I see us going forward. Assuming you authorize me to do so, I'm going to go talk to them about a concept, and not for approval, but for information, with the recognition that all sorts of issues and constraints and restraints need to be worked out, to just give them an idea of the direction we are proposing to go. What that will do is it will do two things. One, it'll tell the policy committee that we just didn't walk away from the crossing, and two, it's going to create an initial impression of the elected representatives as to whether you're out of your friggin' mind, Sharpenberg, or I'd like to hear what you have to say next. And there is a recognition, as you point out, this is not going to happen right away. It will, if it does happen in whatever final form, it will happen in stages. And it will happen, the best cost-benefit analysis going. But it's a vision, much like the long-range transportation plan, that I think is more applicable, less concrete, poured, and roads bulldozed, that provides an answer to a very pressing problem in the region that will only get worse. And so what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is to authorize me to brief in a information brief only, a concept to the policy committee to let them know what our response is to the question I got. Well, what would you strike out of the long-range transportation plan? Yes, ma'am.
Just going back to the crossing, I thank you for that explanation that you gave on the VDOT, on that history. I'm just trying to clarify. It sounds to me like VDOT went ahead and pursued that there's a rejection for 3 reasons, one being a lack of the crossing. Is that a different spot, a different farther west on 17 that we were looking to add a crossing, or what was the genesis of that?
The closer in one was rejected because from one jurisdiction, you're going to take away a business. From another jurisdiction, you're going to have to go through neighborhoods that will object to that kind of traffic. The one further out is an option we can offer, but we're going to have to push it far enough out, either with the concurrence of Fredericksburg or into a crossing site that they no longer have veto authority over.
Wait, how far does their authority extend?
I'm sorry?
I don't know.
We'll research that. It's a fair ways. I think it goes as far out here. They have a water treatment intake facility down road. I don't know if that's the basis of their authority, but that's one of those questions we need to answer. So this concept will have different alternatives. There may be a better option at 218. There may be a better way to connect with Route 3. But it's different from what's been proposed as we get people away from the 95 corridor, which has been, always will be a basket case through poor oversight, planning, whatever. Yes, sir.
Just a question, just for the clarity of your committee. I understand that you want to make a presentation to the policy committee. What is it that you will be asking the policy committee to do so that your committee here understands?
Nothing.
What you're going to ask?
I just want them to listen. And this would be an information brief, no action required, so that they could absorb. And then, after that, you can reach out to your respective representatives and say, well, you heard this, what do you think? And by that time, we'll have more of these what-ifs and danger points and considerations flushed out so that you have a presentation to walk into that representative or that homeowners association or that Amazon executive and say, here's some more information you maybe want to know about. Yes, sir.
There's always going to be what else when it comes to building more roads and minimizing traffic congestion. What he's saying is, if you build it, they'll come. But for the last 20 years in Stafford County, they've been coming
anyway. Yes.
So
they're coming. And again, I encourage you, those Stafford residents, go to the planning website on Friday and notice the 3,000 unit rezoning request that's being dropped into the hopper. But anyway, it's going to happen. So we either try to get a hold of it and provide alternatives, or we get stuck in the traffic and cuss each other out, and there's no improvement.
He's not wrong. And I'll just say this from a planner point of view. That phrase applies to capacity on roadways. Just capacity on roadways. What it means is, there's a phrase to describe it very simply. It's called induced demand. Build it and they will come. Another way of saying that is induced demand. So what happens is, you widen the road by adding a lane. very soon, that lane's going to be full of cars as well, and then the whole road will slow down again. And then you add another lane. And then a couple of years later, it's back to congested again. And then you add another lane. Now, they've done this in Los Angeles till you've got 16-lane highways because you keep on having to add another lane. That's the point that he's kind of making, is that you induce demand by creating more ways for people to move. Right. Your point isn't exactly the same. Your point is that people are moving south down the I-95.
Anyway.
It's not contradicting his point. His point is about a particular road. Your point is about the general movement of people from DC down here because housing is less expensive. They're not mutually exclusive ideas. I can promise you that it is a fact that adding lanes to highways induces demand, and it does not produce a long-term solution, which is why I have some sympathy for Rupert, even though we might not agree on the details, because you never solve congestion long-term by adding more lanes or adding more highways. You just don't. And in Johannesburg, city I spent most of my life in, they have a 7-year, the calculation works out at 7 years. Every time you add a lane to one of the major highways around Johannesburg, and it's a city of 7 million people, every time you add a lane either way, it buys you 7 years. Within 7 years, it's back to gridlock. You can't move on the highway. And then they'll add another one, it buys them another 7 years. So when you add highways or you add lanes on highways, you buy yourself X number of years. The only people who don't believe that are the people who run the hot lanes, the HOV lanes. They keep telling me that they've been going however many years, 9 years or 13 years or whatever, and it's not completely back to what it was before they put them. They're the only people who tell me that it's not. But everywhere else in the world, statistically, it's an unfortunate fact about automobile transportation and freight trucks in the real world. That is, you can never outbuild the need, the demand. The demand gets induced by the very fact that you build. The more you build, the more they come. The more you build, the more they come. And there's even a study that VDOT has done about the I-95 that shows that adding in a certain section, and I think it could be around Woodbridge, but there's a certain section of the I-95 where the study actually shows that adding the lane actually made the congestion worse.
The Octagon?
Now, that's not my study, right? I do not claim that, but you have to face that fact that, and the solution, the alternative solution is multimodal options. You cannot believe that everyone has to get a car and everyone has to ride on the highway, because if that is what you believe, you will ultimately never solve the congestion problem, because more children are being born every day, and when they get to 17, they get their first car and they get on the highway, and if that is their only option, you will induce more and more demand. So I have some sympathy with Rupert, although I don't agree with all of your solutions. But there is a clear fact that simply building lanes of highway will not be a long-term solution. It's a short-term solution, and by short-term I mean about 7 years. It's not 7 years everywhere in the world. It varies, depends on the local conditions. It depends on a whole range of things that factor into that.
There's also a clear fact that if the area is more desirable, they're gonna come.
Oh, absolutely.
Using your example, I lived in LA in 1979. It was a 4-lane highway in 1979. It's a 16-lane highway.
That's exactly the point.
However, given migration, it's gone back down to 8 lanes. So they're leaving.
However, in Manhattan, because you have a very well-developed public subway train system and buses, I think if you count the lanes that have been added to just Manhattan over the last 50 years, it's not actually as much as what you think, because people have been forced to use trains and buses and scooters and bicycles and other things. However, you've got to have the infrastructure, right? And it takes years to build the infrastructure. Holland, they've basically forced everyone to use a bicycle, and it works.
Nobody is suggesting that other modes of transport aren't within our purview and our desires. This is a fix to something that multimodal transportation is not going to resolve anytime soon. Now, there are things that are being studied right now, there are things that are being worked on, and I view this holistically. And we will address those and talk about those in conjunction. But this is a pressing need that is, the congestion on 95 is threatening to strangle economically the region, as well as cause people to go out, get their gun, and start shooting like it's the freeway in LA. Yes?
I'd be willing to make a motion based on what Ian was just talking about, you know, the futility of trying to pave your way out of congestion. And also one factor that hasn't been discussed in any of these beltway alternatives, but it was discussed a lot back when we first considered this, because I was there. And a lot of the people that I talked to, their first concern was the fact that you're crapping up the Rappahannock River. The Rappahannock River, west of town, is one of like 2 or 3 rivers on the East Coast that still looks like it did before this country got crapped up by our highways. It's a pristine river, just like it looked 500 years ago. And you'd be ruining that by putting a bridge upstream from town any place. And everybody that I talked to, that was their first concern. It is not worth any amount of congestion relief to ruin the Rappahannock River. So with that in mind, and with Ian's remarks in mind, I would like to authorize the chairman to make presentations to the policy committee or tech committee or any committee he so desires that do not try to solve this problem by increasing the supply of roads, but do try to solve this problem by decreasing the demand on the roads.
Can you make that a little bit more succinct so I understand what you want me to do?
Before you make any vote, I'll remind you what I said earlier. The staff do not have a view on what solutions should be put in place. We just provide you information. So I'm not saying that you should vote for Rupert's idea. I'm not saying you should vote for Hank's idea. I have no bone in this fight. I'm just giving you information. I'm not saying you should not build another river crossing. It's just information I'm giving you as to what the nature of the problem is. You need to apply your own minds. I'm not joining any side of this debate. It's our job as professional staff to support you with information and maps and give you info, and you guys decide what's good for the region.
So you want to restate your motion?
Beg your pardon?
Restate your motion so we know what we're either.
My motion was authorizing you to make presentations showing that CTAC wants demand instead of increasing the supply of roads, approach the problem by decreasing the demand on the roads.
I don't know how we can do that.
Okay, I'm not sure how I would do that, but
one way of doing it is by congestion pricing. Another way of doing it is by increasing the cost of gasoline. I like congestion pricing myself because it applies to the person who's using the road in question.
Okay. Anybody have any question on the motion? Is there a motion's been made by Rupert? Is there a second?
Hang on, our staff member is taking a minute to say the question. What?
Oh, I just have a question real quick. Also information sharing. The policy committee, just so you all know, the policy committee has asked to be informed on more on this outer connector idea, and asked the staff to give a presentation for their next policy committee meeting, which is this Monday, so they have more information. So just so you know, the policy committee is going to be informed on some other just information.
Right. In other words, VDOT is going to come in and give them the same briefing we got. All right, so the motion has been made. Is there a second?
I have a question on the motion.
First, is there a second on the motion? All right, hearing no second on the motion is whatever the term is, defeated.
Fails.
Okay, question.
I heard the motion. I agree with part of it. But what I didn't hear was road improvement, existing road improvement, which is what I thought I heard you say for about.
With the exception of 2 segments that have to be constructed.
Yes.
That's part of the concept.
Yes.
Okay.
So widening and improving somehow.
With the exception of those 2 legs using the existing road network.
Yeah. I'm just disregarding building new roads at this point. I think the important thing, the message, is to work at the congestion problem by improving existing roads, assuming that is less costly than building the road you proposed, to incrementally, and this would have to be phased, I'm sure, but easier to do, eat the elephant in small bites. And if I heard a motion with that in mind, what you stated, then.
Is that an alternative motion to the chairman's motion, or is that?
No.
No?
No, the chairman didn't make a motion.
No, I can't make a motion.
No.
I'm going to ask for a motion.
You gotta make a motion. Dave, make the motion.
That I be authorized to provide an information-only briefing to the policy committee along the lines of what I've described to you. That's the motion I'm going to ask for.
David Swan, I will make a motion that you be authorized to present to the policy committee or any other body that that we agree needs to be informed about what we're trying to do, but that include the 2 things that I heard you say, and very well, about improving the existing road structure and identifying the most passable routes to get around the main congestion in this area, and then also to consider new construction at some point in time, not right now in opposition to the long-range transportation plan, but at some point in the future to consider adding that to the long-range transportation.
One point of clarification.
Yes.
We can't amend the plan. The policy committee would have to, on the basis of their buy-in to the concept as it evolves, to make those kind of decisions and say, we're willing to substitute this for that. So once we develop the concept and present it to them and we've explored alternatives, it's up to the elected officials to make those kinds of decisions. They can choose, make changes next year, 6 months from now, or 5 years from now, and that's entirely their purview. But what we're trying to do is give them a roadmap, a potential roadmap forward.
Yeah.
All right, so does that sound consistent?
Yes.
All right, so the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion is seconded. Any other discussion?
Quick question on what,
James.
Sorry, quick question on what's being authorized. You are to inform them of the general plan, but are you going to be as specific as you were with us tonight in terms of specific locations and specific ideas?
I'm going to tell them these are some concepts under discussion. A road that generally goes, and the reason I pointed out the road on the right is because it's already in their plan.
Okay.
The road on the left is an option. There could be 2 or 3 other alternatives based on what the engineers, the environmentalists, and everybody else says. But nothing there is hard fast other than let's find some other ways around over the Rappahannock that don't funnel people into the 95 corridor. That's the thought behind all of this. And I'll tell you, there's gonna be a lot of exploration, give and take.
The proposal, as you can see, has two options, two legs, one around the east and one around the west. That's the broad idea, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, and I know I'm talking a lot for my first meeting, I apologize. But I guess my question is to make sure that, well, okay, last thing. Can you define 95 corridor for me?
95 and Route 1.
Okay, so that area specifically.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So any other discussion on the motion that's been made and seconded?
Hank, this is Neil Holler, Butte County.
Go ahead, Neil.
So look, before we all vote on whether Hank as the CTAC chair can go to the policy committee meeting and talk about this and whatever the long-winded explanation of this motion was, the thing everybody should remember is that one, Hank has to go to the policy committee meetings as the CTAC chair, or he has to appoint an alternative. Two, he can go there as a public citizen and do exactly what he's asking for in this meeting tonight. He just wants the CTAC's endorsement, which is what this next vote on this motion will give him, that he can say during the meeting. And two, it should be aware to everybody, if you check what Becky, I believe, said, that the next committee meeting for the policy on the 18th has on it is the document that we've all been looking at tonight for the last hour and a half, proposed with VDOT's slides and Michelle Shropshire briefing all of these outer connector alternatives that have been considered by the FAMPO region since 1993. So, I mean, this is going to be said and done regardless. So I don't really see the point, Hank, at this point, endorsing you for CTAC to go do it on behalf of our thing. It looks like they're going to consider it anyway. If part of your initiative is to say amend the LRTP at some point in the future to consider this further, it looks like they're going to consider it anyway as an alternative, or something might pop up. And unfortunately, so for the last hour and 20 minutes that we've been talking about this, it seems like it's a moot point at this point. They're going to look at it. It's still on the list of things. It's not in the LRTP. The LRTP is a joke, which is what I said last meeting, because it's a 40-year plan that nobody's ever going to really follow and gets updated every 4 or 5 years anyway. So why don't we wait for, and this is all based on your vote, if you say no or yes, but why don't you wait for the East-West mobility study to come out that they're working on now? Why don't you wait for a couple of the other studies that are going on that we already have, or the metrics that are going to come out of the Rappahannock River crossing when that's finished? And we can determine at that point, you know, what are the other options that we should be considering as a citizens committee, which is kind of in line with your original proposals of these 3 groups you wanted to form about traffic mitigation options, of which we've talked about 3 or 4 tonight, and all the other bike pedestrian / handicap stuff that we've been considering over the last 3 or 4 meetings. And we just continue to put a list together and build agendas around building that, versus trying to get our foot in the door of the policy committee, which we kind of already have and are kind of already considering. Thanks.
Okay, Neil, a couple points. The reason they're going to get the brief from VDOT is because we said we didn't concur and we wanted to reinvigorate the outer crossing. So the question was, well, what's been done? The staff said we'll get the same briefing. They're going to hear the same thing you heard, and the objections are not going to change that you have experienced based on that briefing.
That's arguable, but okay, go ahead. Number 2.
Yeah. Hold on just a second. Number 2, there are a lot of things we need to consider along the 3 general lines: congestion, safety, pedestrians, and so on. We run the risk of marginalizing and coming up with the list of incremental improvements to the area, a lot of which is reflected in the long-range transportation plan, because people are not regarding this as a regional issue. They're sub-optimizing their constituents and their regional and their jurisdictional concerns, which is okay, but it doesn't solve the bigger picture. This informational briefing doesn't cost us a damn thing. They can listen, they can tweak some thought process, or they can say, he is the dumbest son of a gun I had seen, and we don't want to hear him again. All we can do, put your hand out, all we can do is give them something to think about, and then you have an opportunity to reach out and say, what did you think? Let's start a dialogue on this thing. Because I guarantee you, if they get the same briefing, and they will, because it's the same VDOT briefer, it doesn't have an eastern option, and it doesn't have a western option that doesn't meet massive opposition from the jurisdictions. So I understand your point, Neil. I think it's important, I'll either go as your representative so that they can feedback to you as members, or I'll go as a private citizen. But they need to hear this stuff, because right now they are in gridlock. They know there's a problem, and they don't have a clue how to move forward. This is our opportunity to at least give them a way ahead. Whether they embrace it or not, who knows? Any other questions about the motion on the floor that's been made and seconded?
Was there someone waiting to speak?
Is there anybody else waiting to speak?
I wanted to make one correction. You were saying that if you make your speech, they would say that maybe you're an idiot. They might not think you're an idiot. They might think this committee is idiots because we authorize the statute. And that's why I don't go.
I disagree with that. I think.
Okay, well, I mean,
I agree.
You can reflect that opinion on how you vote for the motion that's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, the chair calls for a vote. All those in favor of authorizing me to give a concept briefing as an informational-only briefing to the policy committee, signify by saying aye. And if you do a roll call, if you would, Becky.
Neil, 13 members.
Mr. Sharpenberg?
Aye.
Must be good to the whole list because I'm not sure who's here now. Matthew Rowe, Tamara Banks, Josh Brock, Morgan Birch, John Castellarin.
Aye.
Justin Chenault, Jacob Clay,
Aye.
Micah Cunningham, Tara Durant.
Aye.
Patricia Encarnacion, Rupert Farley,
Nay.
Glenn Goldsmith.
Aye.
Larry Gross,
Nay.
Deron Hayes. Aye. Neil Holloran,
Nay.
Michael Hoyt, Travis King, Nicholas Kwadnowski,
Aye.
David McLaughlin,
Nay.
Ken Pogue, James Powell,
Aye.
Dustin Savage, David Swan,
Aye.
Rodney Thomas. Are there any other voting members I've not called?
Okay, if you tally the vote.
Nine yeas, 4 nays.
Okay, the motion carries. We will never all agree on anything, but that's okay. This is a deliberative body. All right. I will try to put together a slide deck relying predominantly on that and some big picture questions and issues that you've surfaced. I'll try to get it out. You may not see it until the Monday morning or maybe late Friday, and then thereafter, depending on a reception, it will be an iterative exchange between all of us. Okay. Do we want to talk about...
We need a public comment period.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. Public comment. I screwed that up. Okay. Are there any comments from the public, either online or in attendance? Hearing none. Any other old business that we need to discuss? Hearing none. Do we need to talk about item A2 tonight? Or can we wait on that?
I believe we could advise them that we certainly there for enforcement in the future at the appropriate time as those accessibility outcomes.
So we can defer that?
I think so.
Okay. I'd like to jump ahead to any other public comment online or in person. Any correspondence that, yes.
This is Dave McLaughlin again. I'm at a disadvantage. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I'm on a phone. I'm on the road, blah, blah, blah. If that was an agenda item A2 and we approve the agenda, how can we not discuss it unless we have another motion to skip it? I don't think we can just deny it, can we? I may be wrong on this.
I'm not sure of the question. We approved you mean you're something, we deferred?
Dave McLaughlin, I think you were a little late calling in. They did a vote early on that you might not have heard modifying the agenda. So Hank, if you went back over the agenda about whatever you modified, because I'm looking at the old one too, because I'm not in the room. That might help.
Yeah, the only thing that's open right now.
No, I think what Dave was saying was that because we approved the agenda with the amendments, with the modifications that kept A2, we have to actually deal with it.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Dave is correct.
Yeah.
We agreed to tackle A2, I believe. We didn't say we were going to defer it at the time.
Very good.
Before we voted, so you're right about that.
Okay, so we'll
go ahead and talk about that. A2 is item A, 2050 Long-Range Transportation Program Potential Amendments. And number 2 is amendments to the goals to improve accessibility outcomes. You have in your packet suggestions that came to us as part of the public comment period for the Long-Range Transportation Plan, and specifically to amend the goals of the LRTP to improve the program objectives for the disabled. So the discussion would be at the appropriate time to pass these suggestions on for potential amendment in the future when the long-range transportation plan goals would be considered by the policy committee.
Neil Holleran, motion to pass this on to the policy committee at the next soonest available moment.
Sounds like Jane. Okay, motion's been made. Second?
Was Jane the originator of this?
Yeah, Jane.
Okay, that clears it up.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave Swan, second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's go for a vote. All those in favor of passing them on to the policy committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Was that an aye or a nay?
Neil, was that you or Dave?
I said aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. Any other correspondence? We're on item number 10.
No, sir.
Okay, no correspondence received. Item 11, any staff reports?
I'd like to introduce Coley Tazell, our assistant, and our communications will come via Coley to all of us with regard to these matters tonight and future matters.
Okay. Item 12, just a reminder to anybody who hasn't stepped forward, if you're interested in participating to any of those 3 sub-focus areas, we still have to follow the FOIA rules, but if you have a particular interest in any of those, you're encouraged to join. They're going to achieve greater prominence as we move forward with this conceptual briefing to the policy committee. Anybody from traffic mitigation want to make a report? And Rupert, we know about congestion pricing, so don't tell us again. Anything you want to report in the congestion mitigation area? Anybody else from the committee? Okay. Anybody from mass transit advocacy? Jane was taking the lead on that. She is stepped back, so that one is open right now if you would like to take the helm on that. And on safety, Matt Rowe is doing that, and we don't have anything to report on that right now. Okay, any other comments or concerns or questions from anybody either in attendance or participating remotely? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Farley?
He just made a motion.
Okay, Rupert Farley made the motion. Second?
Second it.
Everybody raises their hands, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No. Okay, we're adjourned.